Frank Carter had been eating at the same diner every Saturday morning for 11 years, and had never seen anything that made him put down his coffee mid-sip. But when the boy in the back booth looked up while the man he was with walked to the bathroom and blinked 3 times, slow and deliberate, not a twitch, but a signal, Frank knew something was wrong even if he could not name it. What happened next? The text to his brothers, the quiet call to police, the 3 iron serpents who positioned themselves between the booth and the door would reunite an 11-year-old boy with the family he had been taken from 3 weeks earlier, and prove that sometimes the difference between a child lost forever and a child saved is one person in a diner mirror who was paying attention. Frank Carter had been eating at the same diner every Saturday morning for 11 years, and he had never seen anything like what he saw that day. He was 61 years old, a retired pipe fitter who had spent 4 decades working jobs that left his hands calloused and his back permanently stiff. He had been a member of the Iron Serpents MC for 23 years, had held every position from prospect to treasurer to his current role as elder statesman, the guy the younger members came to when they needed advice they could not get anywhere else. His Saturday routine was sacred. Wake up at 6, ride the back roads for an hour while the world was still quiet, then park at Rosie's Diner on Route 9 for eggs, bacon, and coffee, strong enough to dissolve a spoon. He always sat at the counter, 3rd stool from the end, where he could watch the door and the parking lot and the people coming and going. Old habits from old days. Rosie's was the kind of place that had not changed in 40 years. Same red vinyl booths, same checkered floor, same smell of grease and coffee, and something sweet baking in the back. The waitresses knew everyone by name, and the cook knew everyone's order before they sat down. It was a place where nothing surprising ever happened, until the man walked in with the boy. Frank noticed them immediately, not because they looked unusual, but because something about them felt wrong. The man was maybe 45, average height, average build, wearing a polo shirt and khakis, like he was on his way to a golf course. The boy was younger, maybe 10 or 11, with sandy hair and a face that should have been full of energy, but instead looked like it had been emptied out. They took a booth near the back, the man sliding in first, positioning himself so he could see the door. The boy slid in across from him, eyes down, hands in his lap, shoulders hunched like he was trying to disappear into the vinyl. Frank watched them in the mirror behind the counter while he ate his eggs. Something was not right. He could not put his finger on it at first. The man seemed friendly enough, smiling at the waitress when she brought menus, making small talk about the weather. But the boy never looked up, never spoke, never moved except when the man told him to. When the waitress asked the boy what he wanted to eat, the man answered for him. When the food arrived, the boy ate mechanically, chewing and swallowing, without any sign of enjoyment or even hunger. When the man got up to use the restroom, the boy did not move, did not relax, did not do anything except sit there staring at his plate. Except for one moment when the man's back was turned, walking toward the bathroom at the rear of the diner. One moment when the boy's head came up, his eyes scanning the room, searching for something. His gaze found Frank's in the mirror. And then the boy blinked 3 times, slow and deliberate, not the quick flutter of someone with something in their eye, but a signal, a message. Help. Frank's coffee cup froze halfway to his mouth. The boy held his gaze for another half second, then looked back down at his plate, shoulders hunching even further, everything about him screaming that nothing had happened, that he had not just risked everything to send a message to a stranger in a mirror. The man came back from the bathroom, slid into the booth, and said something to the boy that Frank could not hear. The boy nodded without looking up. Frank set down his coffee cup. His heart was pounding, but his hands were steady. 23 years in the club had taught him how to stay calm when things got serious. He needed to think. Hit subscribe if you believe that paying attention can save a life. Comment where you're watching from, and share this with someone who needs to know that one moment of eye contact can change everything. Frank did not know what he had just seen. Could not be certain he had seen anything at all. Maybe the kid just had a twitch. Maybe he was reading too much into nothing. Maybe he was about to make a fool of himself over a father and son having a quiet breakfast. But 3 blinks, slow and deliberate, while the man's back was turned. That was not random. That was a signal. Frank had heard about these things before. The news stories about silent signals, about victims who could not speak finding other ways to ask for help. The hand signal that had gone viral a few years back. The notes slipped to waitresses. The messages written on bathroom mirrors. 3 blinks. He could not ignore it. Could not finish his eggs and ride home and wonder, for the rest of his life, whether he had let something terrible happen because he was afraid of being wrong. He pulled out his phone and sent a text to his brother Leo, who was also in the club and lived 10 minutes away. Need you at Rosie's. Now. Bring Carlos. Then he flagged down the waitress, a woman named Debbie, who had been working there almost as long as Frank had been coming. He asked her to come close, kept his voice low. He told her he thought something was wrong with the kid in the back booth. He told her about the blinks, about the way the boy had not spoken, about the feeling in his gut that would not go away. Debbie's face went serious. She had been a waitress for 25 years, had seen plenty of things that did not sit right. She trusted Frank, had known him for over a decade, and knew he was not the type to make something out of nothing. She asked what he wanted her to do. Frank told her to call the police, quietly. Tell them there was a possible situation, a child who might need help. He said he and his brothers would stay and make sure the man did not leave with the boy until someone could check things out. Debbie nodded and walked to the back, toward the kitchen where the phone was. She did not look at the booth as she passed, did not do anything that might alert the man that something was happening. Frank turned back to his coffee and waited. Leo and Carlos arrived 12 minutes later. They came in separately, a few minutes apart, like they were just regular customers looking for breakfast. Leo took a booth near the door. Carlos sat at the counter a few stools down from Frank. They did not acknowledge each other, did not look toward the back booth, did not do anything that would draw attention, but they were there. And if the man tried to leave with that boy, he was going to have to go through 3 iron serpents to do it. The police arrived 20 minutes after that. 2 officers, a man and a woman, walking in casually, like they were just stopping for coffee. But their eyes were scanning the room, taking in everything. And when Debbie nodded almost imperceptibly toward the back booth, they understood. The female officer approached the booth first, her partner hanging back near the counter. She smiled at the man, apologized for interrupting his meal, said they were doing a routine check and would he mind answering a few questions. The man's smile stayed in place, but something behind it shifted. He said, of course, no problem. What was this about? The officer asked if the boy was his son. The man said yes, of course. The officer asked the boy directly, asked him his name, asked if he was okay. The boy did not answer, just looked at the man, then back at the table, then at the man again. The officer noticed the look. Frank saw her notice it. She asked the man if he had identification, asked if he had any documentation proving the boy was his son, asked if they would mind stepping outside to continue the conversation. The man's smile finally cracked. He said this was ridiculous, said he did not have to prove anything, said he was going to take his son and leave, and if they had a problem with that, they could talk to his lawyer. He started to stand, reaching for the boy's arm. That was when Frank stood up. If you're enjoying this story, hit that hype button right now. It's free, takes a second, and helps this video reach more people who need to see it. Now back to the story. He did not do anything threatening, did not raise his voice or clench his fists, just stood up from his stool at the counter, all 6 feet of him and 220 pounds, and looked at the man. Leo stood up too. So did Carlos. 3 bikers in leather vests positioned between the booth and the door, not blocking the exit exactly, but making it very clear that leaving was going to involve a conversation. The male officer stepped forward, his hand resting casually on his belt near his radio. He told the man that everyone needed to calm down, told him that they just had a few more questions, and then he could be on his way if everything checked out. The man looked at the bikers, looked at the officers, looked at the door that now seemed very far away. He sat back down. The officers separated them then, the female officer taking the man to one side of the diner, while her partner crouched down next to the booth to talk to the boy. Frank watched from the counter, his coffee forgotten, his whole body tense. The boy was talking, slowly at first, then faster, the words tumbling out like water from a broken dam. Frank could not hear what he was saying, but he could see the officer's face changing, going hard, and then soft, and then hard again. After about 10 minutes, the female officer put the man in handcuffs. He was still protesting, still insisting this was a misunderstanding, still claiming the boy was his son, and he had every right to take him wherever he wanted. The male officer came over to Frank while his partner led the man outside. He thanked him, said that Frank's instincts had been right, said he could not give details, but the boy was not that man's son, was not related to him at all, had been missing from his family for 3 weeks. 3 weeks. Frank felt his stomach drop. 3 weeks that boy had been with that man, and no one had noticed anything wrong until today. Until 3 blinks in a diner mirror. The officer said they would need a statement from Frank, from Debbie, from anyone who had witnessed what happened. He said the boy was going to be okay now, was going to be reunited with his real family. He said that what Frank did today had saved a life. Frank did not feel like a hero, just felt tired and sad, and grateful that he had not looked away. The boy's name was Tyler. Frank learned that later, after the statements were given, and the man was taken away, and the diner slowly returned to normal. He learned it from the news, which ran the story that night, and for several nights afterward. Tyler Morrison, age 11, had vanished from his front yard in a town 200 miles away while his mother was inside making lunch. The man who had taken him was not a stranger, but someone the family had known casually, a friend of a friend who had seemed harmless. The details of those 3 weeks were not released, and Frank was glad. He did not need to know, did not want the specifics taking up space in his head, adding to the things that already kept him awake some nights. What he did know was that Tyler was home now, safe, back with his mother and his father and his 2 younger sisters who had cried every night he was gone. The family reached out to Frank a few weeks later. The mother called the diner, got his number from Debbie, left a message on his voicemail that he'd listened to 3 times because he could not believe what he was hearing. She thanked him, told him that Tyler had told her about the man at the counter, the one with the leather vest, who had noticed him, told her about the 3 blinks, the signal Tyler had learned from a video at school about how to ask for help if you could not speak. She said her son had tried that signal before, in other places, with other people, a gas station, a grocery store, a rest stop on the highway. No one else had caught it. Frank was the first person who had seen, and the first person who had acted. Her voice broke when she said that. Frank's eyes were not exactly dry either. She asked if they could meet, if she could thank him in person, if Tyler could see the man who had saved him. Frank said yes, of course, whenever they were ready. If Bike Diaries has become part of your week, consider joining the channel membership. Just a couple bucks a month keeps these stories coming. Links below. And hit that hype button if you haven't already. Now back to the story. They met at Rosie's Diner a month after the rescue. It felt right to do it there, in the place where everything had happened. Debbie set up a private area in the back, the same booth where Tyler had sat with the man who had taken him, now transformed into a place of reunion instead of captivity. Tyler's parents came in first. His mother, Sarah, was small and dark-haired, with the look of someone who had aged 10 years in 3 weeks. His father, Michael, was bigger, quieter, the kind of man who kept his emotions locked down tight, but could not quite hide the redness around his eyes. They hugged Frank like he was family, thanked him over and over until he had to ask them to stop, because he did not know what to do with that much gratitude. Then Tyler came in. He looked different than he had that morning in the diner, still thin, still quiet, but with something in his eyes that had not been there before. Hope, maybe, or relief, or just the knowledge that he was safe now, that the nightmare was over. He walked straight up to Frank and stopped about 2 feet away, looking up at this big man in a leather vest who had noticed him when no one else had. He said, "Thank you." 2 words, simple and quiet. But Frank heard everything behind them, the fear and the desperation, and the hope that had almost died, and the miracle of being seen. Frank crouched down so they were eye level. He told Tyler that he was brave, that the signal he had sent, those 3 blinks, had been the bravest thing Frank had ever seen. He told him that it took guts to ask for help, especially when you did not know if anyone was listening. Tyler nodded. Then he asked a question that Frank was not expecting. He asked if Frank would teach him about motorcycles. Frank looked up at Tyler's parents, who were both smiling through tears. Sarah nodded. He told Tyler he would be honored. The Iron Serpents adopted Tyler the way they adopted anyone who became part of their world. Frank brought him to the clubhouse a few weeks later, introduced him to the brothers, let him sit on the bikes and ask 1,000 questions about how everything worked. The other members treated him like a nephew, like a little brother, like someone who belonged. They gave him a nickname, Blinker. Tyler laughed when they told him why. It was the first time his parents had heard him really laugh since before he was taken. Over the months that followed, Frank became a regular presence in Tyler's life. He visited on weekends, took him to car shows and motorcycle rallies, taught him how to check oil and tighten bolts and all the small skills that made a person feel capable in the world. He did not try to be Tyler's father. The boy had a father, a good one, who loved him and was working through his own guilt about not being able to protect his son. Frank was something else, a mentor, a friend, a reminder that there were good people in the world, people who paid attention, people who acted when something was not right. Tyler started healing, slowly, the way healing always happens, with good days and bad days and setbacks that felt like starting over. He went to therapy, talked about what had happened, learned to process the things that no 11-year-old should ever have to process. His parents healed too, in their own ways. Sarah stopped jumping every time Tyler left her sight. Michael started sleeping through the night again. The whole family learned to breathe, to laugh, to look forward instead of constantly looking over their shoulders. And through it all, Frank was there, steady and reliable, showing up when he said he would show up, proving again and again that the world had people in it worth trusting. 2 years later, Tyler turned 13. His parents threw him a party in their backyard, hamburgers and hot dogs, and a cake that Sarah had made herself with 13 candles and Tyler's name spelled out in blue frosting. The Iron Serpents came, 15 bikes rolling down the quiet suburban street, chrome gleaming in the afternoon sun, neighbors coming out on their porches to watch the parade. Tyler's face when he saw them was something Frank would remember for the rest of his life. They parked in the driveway, in the street, and anywhere they could find space, and then they all piled into the backyard, where the party was already underway. They brought presents and jokes and an energy that transformed a normal birthday party into something extraordinary. When it was time to blow out the candles, Tyler asked Frank to stand next to him. His parents flanked him on the other side. The four of them gathered around the cake while everyone sang. Tyler closed his eyes, made a wish, and blew. Every candle went out on the first try. Later, when the cake was eaten and the presents were opened and the sun was starting to go down, Tyler pulled Frank aside. He told him something he had not told anyone else. He said that during those 3 weeks, when everything was dark and scary, and he thought nobody would ever find him, he had made himself a promise. He had promised that if he ever got out, if someone ever helped him, he would spend his life helping other people the same way. He said he wanted to be a cop when he grew up, or maybe a social worker, something where he could find kids like him, kids who were sending signals that no one was catching. He said Frank had shown him that one person paying attention could change everything, and he wanted to be that person for someone else someday. Frank did not trust his voice to respond right away, so he just put his hand on Tyler's shoulder and nodded. Some things did not need words. Thank you for watching this story about a biker who caught 3 blinks in a diner mirror and saved a boy who had been missing for 3 weeks. It was inspired by the real cases where silent signals have led to rescues, where one alert stranger made all the difference. If you see something that does not feel right, a child who will not make eye contact, a person who seems afraid to speak, a signal that might be asking for help, trust your instincts. You do not have to be certain. You just have to care enough to act. The national hotline is 1-888-3737-888. You can also text 233733. If you sense immediate danger, call 911. Subscribe to Bike Diaries. Hit that hype button to boost this video. And if you want to support what we do, the membership link is below. Share this with everyone who needs to remember that silent signals are still signals, and the person who catches them might be the only chance someone has. Tyler Morrison is 17 now. He is a junior in high school, runs track, volunteers at a crisis center on weekends. He is still planning to go into law enforcement or social work, still determined to be the person who notices what others miss. He still sees Frank regularly. They ride together now, Tyler on a bike of his own, following the back roads Frank taught him to love. And every time they pass Rosie's Diner, they stop for coffee. They sit at the counter, third stool from the end, and they watch the door and the mirrors and the people coming and going. Just in case someone out there is blinking 3 times, hoping somebody will see.